What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about 3 Ghostface killers in Scream 6, why I think it's a good idea, why I would want it, but also the potential problems that arise when you have something like that. So I've talked here and there about this issue, or this topic even, and mainly on live streams. So I thought, let's make a dedicated video just for the record book so that anybody could see it. I'm all in on a 3 Ghostface, killer. I really think that'd be awesome. You want to talk about different, you want to talk about something unexpected. Well, maybe it wouldn't be unexpected for people that want it, but just unexpected in general to have 3 of them, not 1, not 2. And honestly, the 2 thing, I mean, you've done 2 quite often. It's the most reoccurring theme. Yes, you look at Scream 5 to Scream 1, 2. You look at Scream 2 to Scream 6, 2. So do you mimic that? Would you only do 1 killer in the next one, Scream 7? Do they care, I guess, about that kind of lineage, right? Those are, again, questions, but I like the idea quite a bit. I just think it kind of adds an extra something. And even though there maybe are some potential problems that could happen when you have 3, I actually think some of the coolest elements of having 3 are in those problems. So let's talk about some of the issues or things they'd run into that actually, depending on how you look at it, could just all be positives. Maybe there's no negatives at all. So in my opinion, I've said this again before in live streams and stuff, I don't think you could get to the end of the movie in the monologue, like the third act, as we've seen so often, obviously, in these films, with 3 of them. And so I guess I'm not saying that at least one of them needs to be dead at that time. I know I've mentioned that quite often, and we'll talk about it, but there is another case scenario, and that is maybe one of them just isn't revealed, or maybe we know one and they don't really do anything, and then they kind of come in the next movie, or whatever ends up happening. But I guess my point is, when they're doing the monologue, when they're saying why they did the thing that they did, you can't have all 3 of these Ghostface killers if we know that there's 3. You can't have all 3 of them. And I would say just believability is probably the main reason. They even made fun of that, basically, like pointing it out, Richie did in Scream 5, that, it's kind of ridiculous if you keep letting Sydney live, because, like, how in God's name does she keep getting out of these situations? And I like that. I think that's pretty clever. But honestly, that does highlight like a main thing that would start to break down. If you have 3 killers, 3 of them have the upper hand, they have weapons, the survivors don't, right? However, they get them into the situation. But normally what ends up happening is they always give the advantage, at least to start, to the killers, right? To Ghostfaces, plural. And, they'll have knives, they'll have whatever. And the survivors won't. And they'll have to kind of work their way through it, whether that's them turning on each other or just waiting for kind of that opportunity, right? That opening, any one of those things that could potentially happen. The more you add to that, the more people you add to that, the crazier it becomes, right? If there's only one, like a Roman, like it's 1v1. If it's 2v1, okay, that's a lot harder. You're going to have to, like, wait for your opening. You're going to have to hope they turn on each other. You're going to have to hope one takes the other one out, maybe like a Scream 2 thing, right? Like, you got to wait for that. If you have 3, the odds of them going from having the high ground to not having the high ground is pretty unbelievable. And so I just don't think you can do it. So what can you do? Well, again, that's actually why that's the issue. But the exciting part to it would be, well, if you don't have all 3 of them there, okay, well, what do you do with the third one? And that's where the excitement is. So do you reveal them early? And I guess even that, you could keep going. Do you reveal them early, and do you kill them off early? Well, how do they get killed off? Does a survivor do it? Because that's pretty cool, and that's obviously never been done. It could be even almost like a Dewey situation in Scream 5 if he had succeeded. Or Sydney, let's say, in Scream 2, like almost doing it to Mickey in the car. Like, if you unmask them early, just take them out, and then you're done with them. That would be pretty sweet for them, and you could play it off. Do the survivors know that there's more of them, right? So what if Sam, is attacked midway through Scream 6, and she gets the upper hand, and she actually takes out, let's be polite to YouTube, she takes out that Ghostface, like, permanently. Do you have the survivors know or think in their head, well, there could potentially be more of them, so we should stay on our toes? Or do you have them kind of be naive and say, oh, it was just one, there was only 1 killer, we're safe now, right? Maybe you have some of them do it, and then Gail is like, well, most of the time there's 2 of them, right? There's more than 1. Or Kirby even says that, hey, sometimes there's not just 1, there's a second one you don't really expect. Like, only this case it'd be 3. Now, I guess you could pull all that stuff off that I just said, eliminating one in the middle, anything that kind of goes in that area. You could actually do that with 2 Ghostface kills, because then you would end the movie in the monologue thing with 1. It'd be kind of like a Roman thing, that it would work. So it's not exclusive to 3. I just think if you really want your 2 killer monologue at the end, and then but you wanted to spice things up a little bit, right? What would you have to do? You'd have to add an extra one, so you'd have to have 3. Now that's really for a lot of the times I've talked about this, that's where I've stopped. But recently in a live stream, I think with Steven of Craven Something Scary, I had talked about, well, what if they, and the catch here is they kind of already did this with the Scream show in Kieran. And I thought, well, what if one of the survivors, and say you have to introduce them in Scream 6, one of the survivors, what if they are Ghostface, and you play it off where they don't step up to help, and they actually almost watch, or they're around in the same time period as the Ghostface killers are being eliminated, but they are actually Ghostface, and they'll be in the next movie. And then I was thinking that kind of in my head, and I was thinking, that's actually what they did with the show. Now, the show, in the end of season 1, if you guys have watched the show, which I assume a lot of people have, they do kind of separate the characters pretty. So, like, Kieran's there, but then he kind of, like, is not there. He kind of disappears. He's not there, like, in the moment when everything kind of goes down. And so, but the issue you run into, and this is something that I've also said in that live stream, the issue you run into is that the next movie, it's pretty hard to do things. And I think that's actually where the show ran into a lot of issues with season 2, is that you always have in your mind, oh, it probably is Kieran. Like, he was always so, like, you kind of thought it was him in season 1. And then there's these unbelievable things that happen in season 2, or he's in the area along with the killer, and it's like, it's gotta be him. Plus, you have all the evidence from the first season, and it kind of hurts the show. Now, I guess the show's issue was they didn't want you to know. The movies could do it where you do know. So one of these characters, right, Liana Liberato's character, she's Ghostface. You know that. Going midway through the movie, and then you get to the ending, she's a survivor, but she doesn't step up. Well, now going into Scream 7, she's still Ghostface, and you kind of look at it, I would say, a little bit different, where it's like, okay, well, now but the characters don't know, and they've hidden it well. And also, it's kind of a Scream 7 issue. That's one of the most important things to have thrown out. Any of these kind of situations that happen where a killer would make it from one movie to the next, which has never happened except for in the show that happened the one time. So if you do that, honestly, it's almost like let's push it down the road. You don't have to worry about it right now. And I don't know if I could see them doing that, but it would be a thing where it's like, well, we can focus on that for Scream 7. Like, we don't have to worry about if things are going to make sense or if characters would, like, fall for it. We don't really have to worry about it now because it's really only going to become an issue in the next movie. Now, if the next movie, is bad, then maybe that retroactive, that hurts, that goes backwards in time and hurts this one. But you could play it off like that. So, where I've always kind of stopped is you reveal the killer early. They get killed by a survivor, or maybe the Ghostfaces turn on them, right? But I haven't talked so much about there being kind of like a mole on the inside, right? And they're in it for the ending, final act, and then they actually make it to the next film. The final thing I'd like to discuss in terms of 3 killers that would potentially be a negative is the motive. Again, there's ways around it, and I would argue there's probably cool ways around it as well. But the thing is, normally one of them has to kind of be the mastermind, and the other one, maybe they have their own ulterior motives, or maybe the motives kind of slightly overlap with each other, and that's kind of how you can imagine they got together, right? But when you have 3 of them, now, one of the initial things you could do is just have them all have different motives. That's another extremely wild thing that Scream 6, or really any Scream movie, could do, is have Ghostfaces acting independently. In fact, an early theory of mine is maybe one of the FBI / like police, one of those characters, maybe they're hunting down Ghostface killers because of some sort of like redemption or revenge like thing, but they're doing it also as Ghostface, right? So you literally have Ghostfaces acting separate from each other, and their motives don't overlap because they're literally different. And in that case, you could have them take each other out before even the final act, where there's just one remaining, and they're like, well, hey, I just got rid of all the other ones because they were doing their own thing, but my thing's more important, so I took them out. I think that would be, again, rather cool. But now, if all 3 of them fall under the same ideology kind of thinking, that is where it becomes a little bit more tough, right? Because then you have to buy the idea that one of them is a leader. I guess it's not impossible to believe, right? You just all believe in one thing. One of you is more like a leader than the others, and the other 2 are like followers. So I guess it's possible. I just kind of lose some of the excitement. I think if you're going to go for, I don't actually even think you should go for all of them have the same motive. A little boring, a little repetitive for my taste. I think you should actually split it up. But it is a potential issue issue, right? Because what do you decide? Do you decide that they're all working under one common cause, like a cult or whatever? Do you decide that each of them are acting independently of the other? That is something that you would run into. But like I said, I mean, going into these scenarios, for each scenario, you can kind of go a couple different ways, and they all are pretty exciting, I would say, in their own regard. So hopefully they do something. Again, I think some of these things you could even do without 3. If you didn't want to go with 3 ghost faces, you want to go with 2. You could pull off the mole that makes it through, but we know that they're Ghostface, but the survivors don't. You could have it be where one takes the other out, not at the end, not to give the survivors like an opening, because that's it's been done before. It's definitely happened already. But to do it kind of like midway through the movie, where they're just got sick of them or whatever. Maybe one of them gets caught by the survivors and they take him out immediately. Maybe Sam's evil side kind of comes out to play and she eliminates one, and it's like, well, I mean, I kind of get it because that probably helps the overall situation, but also you just took out somebody. Yet again, you've done that before. I think there's a lot of potential there, and you don't necessarily need 3 of them for all of these different branching things to happen, but I think 3 would make it a little bit more spicy, give it a little bit more flair that the other ones haven't had, just because it's new, just because it hasn't been done yet, I suppose. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Make sure you guys are subscribed, bell icon turned on. If you want to check out those Ghostface cups, they're always in the description on my wife's Etsy store. And I will see you all on the next one.